At this time, I would call the meeting to order. Since this is the first meeting, regular meeting of the new year, it's incumbent upon the board to organize itself. So I will entertain a motion to appoint a chairman.
I appoint and nominate Mr. James as chairman.
I'll second that.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
No.
Okay. Mr. James, I'll turn it over to you to run the meeting.
All right.
I think you have to nominate, excuse me, you have to nominate a vice chairman.
Correct.
Yeah, you do.
I'm about to do that.
I'm not doing that.
Unless Mr. Weedman wanted to make a motion as to that, I'll make a motion as to that. I nominate Mr. LaBarbera as vice chairman of the board. Is there a second?
There is a second.
Any discussion? Mr. Porter, would you call the roll?
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
No.
I'm just curious, there was no discussion of alternatives. Did you have an alternative preference, Mr. Weedman?
No, I just cast my vote for the nominees.
Very good. All right. Well, we will move on. I understand Mr. Kellums has an invocation for us. So if you're able to rise, I'd ask that you do that. And Mr. Kellums, we'll turn the floor over to you.
So if you please bow your heads. This was given to us through Nativity School. A new day has dawned with this country divided. Half of your people are rejoicing while the other half are stunned and afraid, Lord. In the midst of our sense of victory, help us to remember your call to us to love one another as you love us. In the midst of our sense of defeat, help us to remember that you still reign. You alone are worshiped. You alone are God. Father, help us to put aside our own feelings in service of others, our families, friends, and neighbors. Father, help us remember your high calling to us to be agents of forgiveness and reconciliation, love and peace, healing and hope in a world made dark by fear and hatred and brokenness. Father, help us to rebuild this nation by seeking out your image in the face of others, finding the best in us to serve those who are the least, the lost and the lonely. Father, help us to remember the words of your servant John, who reminded us that perfect love casts out fear. Help us perfect our love, Lord. We are your people. You know us by many names. You are our God. We know you by many names. May we find strength in our diversity and seek the courage to live what is written on every piece of currency in this nation. In God we trust. For only in you can we live in safety. Only in you will we find justice. And only in you will we know the peace that passes all human understanding. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Kellums. I'd ask you to remain standing if everyone's able to do the pledge to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of
America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
All right. Well, having gotten past all that initial business, I suppose we should have a roll call as to who is actually here for the meeting. Mr. Porter, would you call roll as to the attendees, please?
Mr. James?
Here.
LaBarbera?
Here.
Mr. Weedman?
All right. Next item on the agenda is approval of electronic signatures. During this COVID-19 pandemic, the state of Ohio has authorized local government bodies to meet through remote means, which we're doing tonight through a video conference. During this time, resolutions, motions, and other formal actions of any kind approved by the Board of Trustees have the same effect as if approval had occurred during an open meeting or hearing of the public body with everyone here in person. State law also permits resolutions and other township documents to be signed with an electronic signature. Would each of you please give your consent to placing your electronic signature on any items approved in this meeting which require your signature?
I consent for electronic signature.
I consent.
I consent.
I do.
Mr. LaBarbera, did you?
I did, yes, I consent.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, we have approval of minutes from several meetings, which we'll take in order here. First of all, we have the December 15th, 2020 trustee meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, Mr. Porter, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. LaBarra,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Next, we have the December 17th, 2020 Records Commission meeting minutes. I have a question, though. Is it something the Board of Trustees should be approving, or is that something the Records Commission should approve the next time it meets?
The Records Commission should approve that.
All right, then we'll bypass that on the agenda and move on to the January 4th, 2021 special meeting minutes. Is there a motion as to those?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? Mr. Porter, call the roll.
Mr. LaBarra,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
And then we have finally the January 12th, 2021 special meeting minutes. Is there a motion as to that?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Porter, would you call the roll for the vote?
Mr. LaBarra,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Next, we have our fiscal officer report on the Mr. Rob Porter. Rob, what do you have for us this evening?
Yes, I have receipts of $5,850.62, disbursements of $57,162.99. A complete listing of all receipts and disbursements is available in the packet.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Porter, will you call the roll for the vote, please?
Mr. LaBarra,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Next, we have our public comments portion of the meeting, and I see at least two people here on the video call who I suspect have signed up for that. So, Skylar, are you running this portion or?
That's fine, sir. I am going to, I know at least one of our attendees is gonna want the timer up, so I'm putting that up now.
How many people do we have signed up?
We have two. We have Ms. Kathy Kugler, and we also have Mr. Jay Janis.
All right.
1 second. All right, and I'll unmute Ms. Kugler. Oh, I guess I can't do that. Rob, can you unmute Ms. Kugler? Okay.
Good evening.
Thank you.
How's everybody? I just wanted to speak on the opportunity to develop a volunteer group for Sycamore Township. Many jurisdictions near us, the city of Montgomery and other places, have groups of members of the community that volunteer to do many things, educational, participating in events, thinking up things. So I just like for the trustees to consider this as a really important way that people can feel involved in Sycamore Township and have a way to provide service, and that we can, develop something like that. So I would just like to put that before the trustees as an idea to develop that could do a lot of good for the people who live here and for the township. And that's what I would like to just share with you this evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. So next we have Mr. Janis then. I believe he wanted a timer up, so if we can get that up for him, Mr. Miller, that'd be good.
So far, can you hear me?
Yes.
So far, I do not see a timer.
All right, Mr. Janis, unfortunately, I don't know if I'm going to be able to put that up for you.
Okay, may I? Okay,
Hey, Skylar, if I may, why don't you give him when you get to the 60-second mark, when he's got 60 seconds left, just kind of butt in and mention that. Would you do that?
Tell you what, I'll put it up here, okay? Whenever you're ready, Jay.
Thank you. I don't know if everybody can see this, but this is a copy of tonight's meeting agenda. And I happened to notice recently in the last several meetings, not only the trustees, but other Sycamore Township public meetings, it fails to mention the day of the week and the time the meeting starts. And even though we're in an electronically enhanced world, some of us still, I believe it would be helpful to all to have that considered to be posted on future agendas. And I'm going to try to go down here through some of the departments. Since we're in the new year, possibly new state laws, first is to the law director. Must Sycamore Township trustees and administration buy all motor vehicles through the state bid, or can they go somewhere else and buy vehicles from wherever they wish? Second question is for the lighting districts and townships, particularly Sycamore Township, Ohio, can one person, one property owner declare their property to be a lighting district, and in the event that surrounding properties would not be interested in that property owner be able to have at least one street light close to theirs? Next is the road department. Last week when I was driving up down a couple times on Kugler Mill Road, the township speed limit LED was inserted there, and the lighting was not working. It looked like when I talked before, I guess Mr. Kellums had said the components had been removed for repair. It looked like the components were still there, but it wasn't working at all. So maybe someone might want to look into that. At the intersection of Daffodil Avenue and Tudor Avenue, the street sign there has shown many years of wear. It's basically black sooted, my words, and at night it's almost impossible to read. I would like to know if the administration and township trustees would consider replacement of that sign, since we have a new enhanced Sycamore Road right down the road. If they would like to put up the nice big green and white new sign there, I think none of us would object to that. And the next would be, and on Lancaster, approximately in front of 8805, the no parking anytime sign is bent way over. I don't know if that's for weather or a car did it, but I think that would need to be uprighted and corrected. Next is the fire department. I've recently experienced through the Hamilton County Health Department that people that get COVID-19 tests, they're only doing one nostril or one nasal passage. So my understanding from the CDC that for the COVID test, there should be always both nostrils used. I'd like to know, is that a new CDC guidance or directive, or is it Hamilton County directive, or is that Hamilton County trying to save some money? I talked to Chief Penny before about this. On the chain link fence behind Dillonville Shopping Center by Deer Park High School, all the no parking anytime fire lane signs have been faded out for years. And he said in the past to get back. I know he's busy, but he didn't get back to me on that. And as some of you are aware, there has been some issues there with cars parking along the fence that would impede the possible flow of an ambulance and fire truck getting through. So I think if the new signs are up and visible, that would be helpful. Also around Deer Park Auto Service on the north side, the same thing there. And speaking of Deer Park Auto Service, on the north side, there are 4 parking stalls marked, and they're right adjacent to the yellow curb in the fire lane. That makes no sense at all to me. So possibly the township, the fire chief, or might want to get together with Dillonville Shopping Center management and see if those 4 spaces can be eliminated so the fire lane can continue around. I'd also like to know what the minimum width requirements are in Sycamore Township for a fire lane, no parking area. Next is with the administration. With this COVID pandemic going on, I'd like to know what their plans are for the next 3 big major annual events in the township. Will these be events to be allowed to happen or not? That's the Easter egg hunt, National Day of Prayer, and the Tree Community Memorial Day parade.
That's time, sir.
Thank you.
Guess I need to unmute myself. Thank you, Mr. Janus, for your comments. If any particular department personnel want to address any of those in your own reports, please feel free to do so. You had a lot of questions for a lot of people. If not, perhaps offline, there can be some discussions about that later too. So moving on, those are all the public comments, correct? All right.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's move on to the sheriff's report and Lieutenant Tar.
Am I successfully unmuted?
You are.
All right, thank you. Just two things I want to hit on this week, and these are some guys, some deputies that really deserve some recognition. A lot of this has been in the media late, or both of these have been in the media recently, but I think these guys deserve something more than a little just a newspaper story or a few minutes on the TV. On December 21st, our CIS, our criminal investigation section, received 6 indictments for the November 2019 murders at the Hampton Inn. They really did a bang-up job with that. It countless hours. They served over 47 warrants. Of those 6, 3 were indicted for murder, 1 robbery, and 2 with gaming charges. So they really did a bang-up job on those. And then I think most people probably saw recently the night of the 9th at the First Church of God on Fields Earl Road. A lady had a diabetic episode and run off into the trees. And really just some heads-up patrol work by one of our guys was able to locate the car. And then with the assistance of an officer from Montgomery, they were able to get her out. And I've seen the video. I'm sure a lot of you have. It's pretty harrowing. It doesn't really do justice to how close that could have turned out a lot worse. So really good job for all those guys. Appreciate your support.
Absolutely, that was very impressive. Chief Penny shared a longer video with us too that Moeller had put together, providing some of the backstory for what happened there. The whole thing is just amazing. So good thing they were able to help that lady out and were able to get her out of the car, certainly. You have a new boss now, Lieutenant Tar. Anything we should expect on the township end as to any of that?
Really, as far as the patrol functions, we expect it to be business as usual. Obviously, she's got a lot on her plate, the new sheriff. So she has made it clear to us that she expects to reach out to the townships. But obviously with COVID and a lot of stuff going on downtown, that's going to be a little bit out, but she will be in touch.
Very good. Anyone have any questions for Lieutenant Tar? All right, we'll move on then to the fire department and Chief Penny. Chief, what have you got for us for EMS and Fire Report?
Good evening, gentlemen. First of all, to address Jay Janis' report that he gave, I did receive an email from him about the parking on the fire lane. I talked to the sheriff's department about it to keep an eye on that area, and I talked to our fire inspector about that. But I didn't see anything about faded fire lane signs on his email, so we'll definitely follow up with that and see what's going on there. So I'll get with Doug Morath, our fire inspector, and we'll see what we can do about that area down there with the fire lanes and stuff. So on the COVID side of things, 2 things. One is since December 1st, we've had 358 additional people quarantined in their homes. And as we had 8, and as of today, we had 9 full-timers that have had the COVID, 9 of our firefighters. So we're working on some strategy with some staffing and that sort of thing to try to keep the crews running while we got these guys out. So it's been a battle, but so far we've been managing okay. Did you receive my monthly report today? Everyone? Yes. Okay.
What jumped out at me, Chief, was the December EMS reports up considerably, 263 to 11, a big jump.
Yeah, and so far this year, it's jumping up even more. We've been pretty busy so far in 2021. So things are starting to pick up. I guess the people are getting out. We're starting to get businesses and that sort of thing. So we are starting to get a little busier. So other than that, the only other thing I got is the consideration for purchasing of the gas detectors. We have two gas detectors that we carry on our fire trucks that we use when residents and people call us for gas leaks in their building, and these meters are used to measure the amount of gas that's in a building, so we can tell whether it's at an explosive level or not. And they're quite old, and we've had them recalibrated 4 or 5 times, and they're pretty much seeing their last leg. So we don't want to go in there with something that critical with a bad calibration, and then find out that our gas levels are higher than what our meter's telling us. So it would be worth it for us to go ahead and replace those. And I believe you guys have the PO in your packet. Has the cost on them. So we'd like to get approval to go ahead and purchase those.
Actually, this is a quote in the packet, Chief, and these things fall under a blanket PO.
Okay.
So do we need a motion?
I don't think we do, but.
Okay. Then I won't make one.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, and we've already appropriated this too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Very good. Anybody have any questions for the chief? All right. Thanks, Chief.
Okay.
Next on our agenda, we have roads maintenance and recreation report. We have Tracy Kellums and Jason Petty standing by here. So who wants to go first?
I'll let Mr. Petty go first. He's here to discuss the park rules and also the park survey.
So our Parks Advisory Committee met on Monday the 4th, and we went over the rules and regulations again. And I spoke with Mr. James last week about some of the rules. The rules that we had changed, there were a few things that we had left out and needed to be changed. The one was section 15. I'm trying to pull that up right now. Section 15, we had discussed in the last meeting about taking some of the language and changing it to like, deregulate some of the alcohol rules. So the way that it reads now, and Skylar's pulling it up, the way that it would read now is no alcoholic beverages shall be sold in any park except with specific written permission from the board or its agents with the rental of an athletic field, shelter, or a pavilion area. And that is actually different than what you guys received in the packet that went out. And I just wanted to make sure that that was, that you were aware of that, because it was brought to my...
So you removed or consumed, correct?
That is correct. And then there was a second sentence at the end of that that talked about where you could drink in the parks. That was also removed.
That was removed?
That was removed, yes. So, and then once Skylar has it up, I'll show you exactly how it appears on the document now. I think we're having some compatibility issues with some new Zoom features. Let's see here. All right. One second here. I'm sorry, guys.
Jason, do you have the sentence as it stands now? Why don't you just read the sentence?
Yes. So section 15, alcoholic beverages. No alcoholic beverages shall be sold in any park except with specific written permission from the board or its agents with the rental of an athletic field, shelter, or pavilion area.
So maybe, do we know what other communities do with consuming of alcohol? Do they restrict it? Do they not restrict it?
The only other municipality that I've looked at was Sims Townships, and their rules were very similar to what ours were before we changed anything. So their township rules were very similar to what we had before anything was changed.
I also looked at Anderson Townships, and theirs also was a lot like ours. it said no sale or consumption.
Yeah. Kind of opposed I'm kind of opposed to taking consumed out.
Mr. Desai, do you have an opinion on that?
You're muted.
You're muted, sir.
In terms of whether it's legal,
Well, I'm sure it's legal to.
Tracy, are you asking me, do I have opinion about whether it's legal or what's my personal opinion about changing the policy?
Just changing the policy. If we take out consumption, is there, added liability there for us?
Well, I think, what your research shows is that what's being proposed is out of the norm. So typically the way the rules existed prior is the way that I've seen most of the rules in municipalities and townships.
Yeah, my thought, I had suggested taking that out because we have other provisions in our park rules that prevent unruly conduct, public drunkenness, things like that, and the law prevents that also. So those are remedies that are there. If somebody wants to go to the park with a beer in a cooler, I think we should encourage people being in our parks. I think some of them are probably doing that anyway, whether they rent a shelter or not, and we're restricting something that I don't know is really necessary because we're already covering any bad behavior from the other restrictions we have. But I can go either way, I suppose, here.
So I think that is the only thing that we changed aside from the language in section 13, the very last sentence. In section 13, no person shall use skates, skateboards, rollerblades, bicycles, motorized models, or any other objects with wheels recklessly or in a manner to inconvenience the public. And then also, I'm sorry?
That's pretty subjective.
So I think it was changed from the original that said that they couldn't use on the paths or any paved areas. So I think the idea behind that was that they can use them, just not in a manner that's going to inconvenience anyone else. The way that I think it was written before made it sound like they couldn't use them in the parks at all.
So who's to determine what's reckless and what isn't?
That I do not know.
Okay.
I don't know.
So my other question is, would that cover us on say property damage? We have a lot of skateboarders at the super shelter at Bechtold that are damaging and grinding down the concrete, and it's really a mess.
I agree.
Yeah, which I don't necessarily think that it still would be in, recklessly or in a manner to inconvenience the public. So I don't necessarily know that that's, letting them being asked to not do it. But
There's certainly standards as to recklessness versus non-recklessness, just as with reckless driving and other things. It is subjective, certainly, in that sense. Nonetheless, someone's got to make a judgment as to whether it appears to be reasonably reckless or not. What's our enforcement mechanism, assuming we do decide that? Is this something the Hamilton County Sheriff's Office enforces, or do we have Mr. Kellums or Mr. Petty run out and hand somebody a ticket?
I don't think we have the authority to do that.
In the past, if we see anyone in our parks doing something, if we see the kids skateboarding in the pavilion, we ask them to stop and to not do it. Other than that, I don't know that we take any further action unless there's property damage. I would think if you can prove that they were the ones that, like kind of what Tracy was talking about, that area at the fireplace, they continuously use that and slide their skateboards on it, and over the years it's worn it down to where it looks pretty bad. So
which makes me ask the question, then, is it possible that we perhaps just outlaw or rule out skateboards in the park? because everywhere that these guys use the skateboards, they're trying to jump things and get onto rails and everything else, and all of that does damage. And I totally agree with you on the fireplace. That looks terrible.
Next, it's like the next page, all the way to the end.
Gotcha. Sorry.
It's okay.
The ideal situation, of course, would be Delhi Township. They have a whole area that's set aside for those kids on the skateboards. And it's very successful. Rollerblades, bicycles use that same area. But we don't have that luxury.
The feeling even in Delhi, they're probably riding skateboards in other places they're not supposed to, but but the park would be attractive for them for that. Yeah. Is there anything we can do about the fireplace? I know there are little metal blocks that you see placed on stretches of concrete sometimes that prevent skateboard usage, or would that be damaging to the fireplace too?
We could most certainly look into different things that you can attach to the end of. They'll have sometimes a metal ball that you can attach at the end, or another piece of concrete that will attach to the end. I don't know if that's something that we can put on without it getting broken off.
Yeah, I've also seen concrete domes that have been attached to concrete before. We can definitely look into that.
If it's causing damage, that may be worth checking out at least. Yeah. In terms of prohibiting skates or skateboards in the park, though, entirely, I don't know. A lot of things people use cause wear and tear on public facilities we're providing. We don't want them causing damage to the fireplace or other things, but if they want to use a skateboard on the trail around Bechtold Park or the parking lot, then I don't know that we should be restricting that.
Probably not an optimal place in the parking lot.
No.
I can, if you guys would like, I can put this back in. I can look at this again.
We'd really like to get an opinion from you guys on this tonight. We've gone back and forth on this several times.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Weedman raised an interesting point about what other townships have done in their rules. That would be interesting to see. Sims we have as a comparison, but if there's an opportunity to look at others before the next parks meeting, that would be good to know, I guess. My view is I think we can take out the consumption of alcohol restriction, because I think we have plenty of other rules covering anything that may flow from that that's bad anyway. And the people who are going to do it are probably going to do it anyway, whether we're outlawing it or not. If we see a problem with it, we're going to ask them to leave because they're being unruly, not because they've got a can of Pabst Blue Ribbon in their hand, I expect. Skateboards, I don't know. I mean, kids go to parks to have fun. We don't want them using it in areas where it's going to damage things, and just putting up a sign or saying don't do it probably isn't going to keep them from doing it anyway. Even if
that's not worked in the past, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, they're doing it now, and are they supposed to be doing it now? What does our current rule say is to skateboards?
Yeah, that's correct. Our current rule is to not, the current rule is more limiting than this is here. So they're currently breaking the rule. That's correct.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys need to see, if you slide down, it actually has the language and that is the section 15 is the way that it would look now, the updated version for alcoholic beverages.
Well, Tracy, you said you wanted guidance tonight. Do you want us to vote on which way to go with any of this, or are you taking our temperature to go back to the Parks Committee one more time to come back with a final recommendation? What are you and Jason thinking?
Well, we were hoping for a vote, but if you want us to, we can always go back and gather some more information from other townships, what they're doing in their parks, for Jason to have when he goes back to the park board.
Okay, and I know Mr. Weedman is not in favor of changing the alcohol rule. I am. I'm just curious. This is not a vote, and we may all change our minds in one way or another. Mr. LaBarbera, what are you thinking? Because that may bear on what the committee is thinking.
Well, the 15, section 15, is there a problem with that? I agree with that, the statement, no alcoholic beverages shall be sold any, with the exception of written permission from the board or agents.
Right, the question's not selling, it's consuming otherwise. Can somebody bring a cooler to the park and sit out there and have a picnic in the sun and pull a beer out of their cooler when they haven't rented space to do it in? That's the question.
Well, here's what you have, Jason. Here's what you have. You have baseball teams that go out and play on our many fields that we have, soccer fields that we have. And I got to tell you, from going to games for many, many years, there's always a couple of guys that are standing by themselves off to the side, drinking a beverage, maybe out in left field, way above the crowd, way beyond where the crowd is, drinking that beer. And that just happens at ball games. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
Okay.
Okay, well, I hope that gives y'all guidance at least into where to go, and then come back to us with the final proposal there in our next meeting, possibly after your next meeting.
So
Tracy, the only other thing I would interject is what Mr. Weedman said at the beginning of the reading of the skateboard provision regarding the recklessly or inconveniences the public. You might want to hone those down a little bit so that they're not so subjective.
Okay.
How do you suggest that, Deepak?
Yeah.
How would you word that?
Can you put some wording together for that, Deepak? I don't know if Jason, the committee, would be able to tighten that up any.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
Okay. Because from the committee standpoint, everybody on the committee was good with the rules being presented tonight and voted on, but it's not a bother at all to look and to see, compare different townships' rules and regulations to go off of it. The next thing I have, unless there's any more questions with the rules, is the park survey, the rough draft for the park survey. There were a few things that were added in from the last survey that we had. Number 2, do you work?
That survey.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay.
Do you work in Sycamore Township was added. There were a few grammar, spelling corrections. And then I think the main thing, one of the questions that we were asked to look at was number 10. Would you be in favor of Sycamore Township investing funds and other resources into development of a nature preserve with walking trails within the township? So I think those were the few major changes that were made. And this, if you guys are able to vote on, I think especially the committee is wanting to get moving on this as soon as possible, if you guys are okay with that. And then we can get moving on getting it in front of the residents.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm in favor of this. This looks good to me. I've looked it over in the revisions.
Okay.
How do we propose to get this to the residents?
So it would be in the township newsletter that will go out. I think Beth was also going to put it on the township email blast, the newsletter that goes out on the email. And also
Facebook.
The survey, I don't know if you can they see it?
Yeah, you can see it. So it would be a sign with a QR code.
We're gonna have signs, just like we did with yoga in the parks.
Okay.
And have a QR code on them. We put them in the parks and in areas around the township that would be, where people would see them, that they could scan it and have the survey right there on their phone or any kind of electronic device. And she was also gonna put it on Facebook, Twitter, and it would be on Constant Contact, but everything would lead them either to the township website or the survey itself.
Skylar, can you scroll back up to number 2, please?
Yes, sir.
There are 2 number 2s, Jason. You'll need to renumber before you publish.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't.
Yeah. Thank you.
And number 5 has an indenting problem, by the way, too.
Well, so this sheet is just listing the questions. it's going to be a digital survey, so this is all going to have to be re-inputted into a survey service, like SurveyMonkey or one of those others.
Okay. Do you need a motion and vote from the trustees to move ahead with this, or?
I believe so.
Okay. Anybody have any further comments first? If not, is there a motion?
Mr. James, what is the motion, to approve the rules or to take it back to the committee?
We've moved on from the rules, I thought, and weren't voting on that. I'm referring to the survey here now.
Just the survey, okay.
Just the survey.
Yeah. Is there a motion as to this?
I'll make a motion.
All right, was there a second?
I thought I did the motion. Okay, I'll make a second.
Okay, you both spoke over each other. All right. Any other discussion as to the motion?
No, just correct as you said, the numbers.
And just to be clear, the motion is to proceed with the survey using these questions, using this language in the manner described by Mr. Petty for presentation to the public. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Porter, would you call the roll then so we can vote?
Mr. LaBarbera?
Aye.
Mr. James?
Aye.
Mr. Weedman?
Aye.
All right, Jason, do you have other things?
The only other thing that I was going to mention is that we have now online, you can check field availability, and we're renting ball fields currently. A lot of them are filling up. McDaniel is pretty well booked all the way through spring for baseball and softball, and field rentals are open and getting ready. Well, you can put permits in. We're not open the fields right now, but everything is online, and you can look at that if you guys ever want to get a chance to.
Okay. All right.
And that's
Mr. Kellums, roads and maintenance.
Yes, so the first thing that I have is I joined I was in a pre-construct meeting for the Duke Central Corridor pipeline. So after all this time, this project is actually getting started. It is scheduled to start on March 1st. They're going to have 2 crews going. One's going to start in Reading. The others will be starting in our area up there off of School Road where their station is there. They have 80% of the easements for the whole project already acquired, so they're doing well there. All the right-of-way permits are in. They're still waiting on railroad permits, but they are getting started. Their main laydown yard will be at the old P&G property on Reed Hartman, but they will have a laydown yard on School Road behind the businesses there in order to get this project started. So there's not a lot of work in the township, but there is some, coming down Conray and then going over to Grooms and cutting Grooms. So they're going to do a lot of boring. They're boring under Kemper, boring under Conray. And actually, they're going to auger bore under 275 also. So that will be interesting to see. They're going to do some work at night. Reed Hartman will be working at night. We'll start in the middle of February. In case any of you get phone calls from residents that are wondering what the survey stakes or flags are out, it will be for this project. That's starting in the middle of February. And they're doing a great job on public information. They've got a web page going. There's going to be weekly updates posted to that web page. We have put a link on our web page to that project. They're going to mail out letters. I've asked them to mail out letters to everybody that is in the infected area 1 month out with important pipeline info on the outside of the page so that it's just not thrown away on the outside of the envelope. They're also going to follow that up with postcards to the communities 2 weeks out and they're gonna have progress reports every other week, bi-weekly. I've asked them to send all that to us also, so we can add it in a link to our website, so that all our residents can be notified. And also, if anybody asks, there will be a field office in the Cornell office park there, the office park at Cornell and Reed Hartman behind that PNC for walk-in, in case any of the residents really have questions and want to talk to somebody, they can go to that field office and get any of the information they want. So that is just around the corner, getting ready to start March 1st.
Trace,
Yes.
I know at one point in time they were interested in using the park for staging area. I'm assuming that that's history.
That is history. That is not going to happen.
Hey, Tracy, in connection with that, there was a discussion at one point about them needing to get easements for purposes of doing some boring underneath the North Fire Station entrance. And do you know, is that still in the works?
I do not know. They did not mention that.
Okay.
I don't think it's even going that direction anymore.
I don't think so.
It's coming down Conray to Kemper, going west on Kemper, underneath across Groom, underneath 275, across Grooms to Reed Hartman, and then goes south on Reed Hartman. So that is, and that goes down Reed Hartman to Pfeiffer, Glendale, Milford. So the only part of the township it's going to be on really is coming down Conray and over Kemper, and then it's into Blue Ash, and it's out of our territory.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So another long-awaited project, we also had a pre-construct on the Kugler Mill Road project. So we're getting ready to start Kugler Mill. We are going to start water main work on that project on the west end of the project on February 1st. The water main work should be completed by April. A press release went out today from the county talking about a closure. The Kugler Mill Road in between Kenwood and Blue Ash is going to be closed during working hours for the water main work. But those roads will be open at nighttime. But during the day, and that's also for Chief's benefit, Kugler Mill will be closed during the day during work hours because they'll have open trenches in the road. And then after the water main work is completed, they're going to start immediately on that west end, following that up with the actual road work. And they're going to work west to east. This will be done in 3 phases. Blue Ash Road to Kenwood Road will be 1 phase. And then Kenwood Road to the I-71 overpass will be a phase. And then the 71 overpass to Montgomery Road will be the final phase. So if everything goes as planned, this should be done by the end of October. So that's going to be a lot of work in a short period of time, but I don't foresee any holdups. Duke does have some tie-ins that still need to be done and some services, but those are all at the far east end where they put new gas main in. That's supposed to be done within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So it'll definitely be done well before the construction crews at the east end, since they're starting west. But we will also have all this information on our website and keep updating the website as we go so that everybody knows what's going on. So do any of you have any questions about the Kugler Mill Road project?
Not for me, no.
What?
I will say thank you for getting that pothole patched I called you about last week. Within hours, it was patched on Kugler Mill Road.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So Rack and Balor, we have not used. I've talked to a lot of other townships. They have used them. They're the ones with the contract. They seem very eager and ready to go. Some other townships that I've talked to have said they've had no problems. These guys have been very responsive. So I'm looking forward to working with them.
The neighbors are excited. It's been a long time coming. Thanks,
Good,
Tracy.
I'm glad to hear that.
Tracy, where are we in regards to our road projects as it relates to using the 25% of the TIF funds that we have available?
Okay, I'm coming to you the next meeting to give you a breakdown in money of what we're spending. We've got the roads. I've got that put together. We also have a number of retaining walls that need to be constructed along the Dillonvale Creek lines that need to be done. And we're working on putting that together. We've got the specs together and we're ready to hit the road, and that will come to you the next meeting.
Are we able to use that money for those retaining walls?
Yes, we are. That is infrastructure in the right of way.
Okay.
And it's maintenance, right?
Yes, it is maintenance.
And we're looking at, what, about $5 million possibly?
That's what we budgeted, so
That's what
we'll
we
see.
budgeted. We'll probably be around the 4 mark, maybe a little under the 4 mark.
Great. That's great.
Okay, got anything else for us, Tracy?
No, sir.
Okay, well, I do have other questions. I just didn't have questions about Kugler Mill Road.
All right.
So you mentioned Kugler Mill Road being done by end of October, if to plan. Speaking of being done by the end of October, how's our maintenance building doing?
We'll be done by the end of October.
Thursday.
Which year?
It'll be done Thursday.
So it is still proceeding slowly. We were supposed to have a walkthrough on that project Thursday. I have canceled that walkthrough because I've determined that there is not enough done and it would be a waste of time for the architect and all the engineers to come and do the walkthrough. They were supposed to pour curb on the last section Monday, but as usual, it wasn't done Monday. It wasn't done today. It's not going to be done tomorrow. So we still have curb on all the side. As you know, the salt dome's down, but we still need the driveway on that whole end constructed. None of that is done. They're out there pushing gravel around today with a bobcat rather than a bulldozer. The report that I got was that the general contractor didn't want to pay the sub to do the grading with the bulldozer with the GPS on it. So just another issue that we're having with this general contractor. So that all has to be done. And that's before we still have to do the apron on the north end outside the firehouse. So there is heat in there. Fuel tanks have not been set. There is still a number of things that need to be done. I don't think it'll be done by our next meeting. I see a month. They're telling me it'll all be done, but there's not enough people working to get it done.
All right, well, keep us posted on that.
I definitely will.
Yeah. Question for you, or maybe for Jason, both of you. Also, I know a few people have asked me about this, and we probably addressed some of this before, but I'm told by Parks Committee members that they were concerned there's an old Parks master plan of some kind that was put together. My guidance to the Parks members is we set up a Parks Committee so they can look forward, not back at what it might have been put together in the past anyway. If there's a plan to make, let's make one going forward. But is there any information you can provide about this Parks master plan? I understand it was found in a file and no one's quite sure where it came from. Is that right?
Yeah, there was a Parks master plan put together. I believe most of that work was done by Mr. Bickford and Mr. McEwen. It has not been implemented, so I would agree with you 100% that Jason and the Parks Committee should look forward and not backward. And if they want to put a new 5-year plan together, let's start working on it and let's implement it.
Yeah. And I also got questions about, I think you've addressed this before, but a Duke Energy grant for putting together a parks plan. Is that what the grant was for, and have we used it on something for the parks?
As far as I'm aware, there was never, the grant was not for putting a plan together. I'll have to check into that. The grant was used for putting trees throughout Schuler Park and also for playground equipment back here behind our building. We're moving the excuse me, the existing playground that was back there, but we're also adding to it. And the grants were for trees and for playground equipment, as far as I know. I am not aware that it was for putting a plan together.
Okay.
Excuse me for jumping in. I'd like to see that old parks master plan that Bickford put together with Mike. I'd like to see that, if you have a copy of that.
Yeah, right, we do.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Kellums or Mr. Petty? All right, thanks, gentlemen. Let's move on to our planning and zoning report then with Mr. Schuyler Miller.
Yes, sir. All right, I'm gonna start screen sharing again here. I originally had 3 resolutions for you to consider tonight. After discussing it with Mr. Desai, I'm actually going to pull 2 of those. Just a brief overview. We have a property owner in the township. Everybody see the screen share?
Not yet.
Yeah. All right. While that catches up, I'll tell you. So we have a gentleman in the township who owns multiple residential properties. They're all pretty much in the same situation. They're collecting trash and debris, as well as a collection of vehicles and some pretty haphazard conditions. So we were originally going to come in and do kind of this blanket junk vehicle resolution on 2 of them. But at this time, we kind of need to get more information and get a foot in the door, shall we say. So tonight we're gonna tackle the trash and debris on one of the properties, kind of the biggest culprit, and I don't know why. Can you guys see the screen?
I just see a black screen. It says you're sharing, but I see black. Does anyone else see anything other than black?
Black screen with Schuyler's name.
I don't see my face. All right, let's try this again. Nothing?
Well, we all got a copy of it. The trustees all got a copy.
Okay. All right. So
but if we can get it on the screen, I'd prefer that so the public can see.
Yeah, I would too. If I can just. Rob, do you have, Mr. Evil, do you have admin controls, or am I supposed to?
Let me see if I can do this. I have the resolution up here.
Yeah, if you can do it, that'd be great. So the only one I'm asking for tonight is, I'll read the title at least.
Can you see this now, anyone?
Not yet. I'm going to stop mine.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. James. So what I have tonight is a resolution providing for and authorizing removal of vegetation, garbage, refuse, and other debris, declaring a nuisance for the property located at 3700 East Galbraith Road, Sycamore Township, Ohio, 236.
Motion.
If you don't mind scrolling down to the pictures.
Yeah, let's look through it before we make the motion here.
I've already
Yeah,
looked at it.
I just want to bring this up for reference and talk about it. This is just an example. You can see the kind of accumulated tarps. There's, in that bottom right corner, you can see some garbage bags. This is indicative of other properties as well. We have reached out to this property owner multiple times. He is contacting us, but it's simply to tell us to stay off his property. So the neighbors are very upset. They've given us permission to enter their property to take pictures. So neighbors are being cooperative, but it's certainly not something that's going to be fixed overnight. So part of this process is if the owner does not clean it up for themselves, that would give us authority to enter the property to clean up, which would then also give us justification to document the rest of the site. Again, we are trying to clean up the property to some extent, but this is really a foot in the door tactic to, again, try and collect additional information. And hopefully if we show the resident that we're the property owner that we're serious about this, we might get more cooperation. At any point in the time during enforcement, if they're willing to work with us, we can certainly back off and be less aggressive. But again, we do have active neighbors in this area that are really concerned. And since we've put these resolutions on the agenda, there's actually been more cars that are accumulating on site. So, do you have any questions about that?
So how many are there now? You had 7 in the proposed vehicle resolution for that. Are there more than that?
Yeah, I think at one point there was 10. I don't know if that was on. I think that was on Friday that we saw that.
And you and I had spoken about this. I looked it up on Google Maps with the satellite view, and you could see there from whenever that picture was taken in 2020, there were a multitude of cars all over the place on the property too.
Yeah, I think this is a long-standing problem. There's actually, again, there's 2 properties on East Galbraith, and then there's another one elsewhere in the township. So we're going to be working on this. Again, I think for a while, trying to piece this together to get a satisfactory resolution.
All right. Well, Mr. Weedman had made a motion to approve the resolution as presented. Is there a second?
There is a second.
All right. Any discussion about this, gentlemen?
Yes, Skylar, this is 3,700, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think, haven't we had problems with it before? I remember.
I believe historically there have been issues.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Miller about this? If not, Mr. Porter, would you call the roll for a vote, please?
Yes, Mr. LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Okay. Other than that, I'm just going to give you a quick update on a couple of long-term projects. I expect to really flesh these out over the next month or so. First and foremost is the new Sycamore Township land use plan. That's something that after the end of last year, it kind of stalled out to a certain extent, partly because of COVID, partly because of other projects. I am back at that. I'm going to try and finish up apps here in the next couple of weeks, and I'm hoping to have a final document submitted to Zoning Commission for an initial review by the end of next month. So I'm trying to commit to a deadline there for the benefit of the commission and for the board. Meanwhile, we also have the Montgomery Road planning project. We have the township-owned properties just to the west of Kenwood Road on Montgomery Road. I have met with our planning consultant on that, and he is currently kind of putting together an outline for the upcoming focus groups, and it's kind of my job right now to put together this first focus group, which is going to be comprised of residents from the surrounding area. So it's been a little more difficult than I thought to tap residents, especially trying to get an unbiased and sampling of the area. But I am working on that right now, and I'm hopeful that we will get our first focus group, hopefully by the middle of February, and schedule that. Mr. Warwick contacted the Jewish hospital representatives, and they are making their auditorium available to us. So it's a larger room that we can spread out and meet in person. And we will, of course, so these are focus groups. This is not like a standing, public body. We're trying to get input from our citizens. So we will be streaming these meetings, but they're not, unless Mr. Desai has a opposing opinion here, they're not necessarily, a public body or a public meeting in our usual sense. But we will make these meetings available to the public in every way possible and properly document them.
Yeah, Skylar, I think the best approach with that is to always presume that we're subject to the Open Meetings Act and make them available to the public, especially since we have the benefit now of being able to do that by Zoom or Google Teams or whatever people want to use. But you don't have to allow public comment. Right. The board allows it at their meeting, but that's something subject to their discretion. So I think as long as you make them available to the public so they can see the business going on, we're not going to run afoul of any Open Meeting Act violation.
Okay, good. So the first focus group is going to be with residents. The second one will be with business owners in the area. And then the third would be with prospective developers or members of the development community. This will, again, culminate in a charrette style meeting. A charrette is kind of a not necessarily on the fly, but it is a planning brainstorming session where we take all of the information, including the market analysis, and try and develop some conceptual ideas to help guide us with the future development of the site. That would be a one-day session. And I haven't spoken to my steering committee yet, but I think that would be a great opportunity to retap some great professional and diverse minds in the township. So the land use steering committee, whether it's augmented or not, could be the core of our charrette planning group. So, and then from there, we'll develop a specific master plan for the site. So,
just to be clear, is
happening first quarter.
Great. Just to be clear too, as to these focus groups are composed solely of the groups of people you're mentioning. This is not something for township personnel to participate or have input in. Is that correct?
No, I mean, I'll be there as a facilitator, but it's not really so much our job to guide these discussions. There will be a basic outline that our independent planning consultant will provide us. There may be some discussion topics that he sets out, but we're not trying to lead the conversation so much as gather information from from the public. The other thing that we're trying to do is we're starting with the residents in the area, essentially, having them create the foundation of the public input process. The idea is that we get them, literally at ground level, so that each focus group is going to inform the next. So we'll have their concerns, their wishes, and just general comments for the following meetings.
Very good. Well, it's very nice of Jewish Hospital to make their auditorium available for this too. That's a really nice facility and will allow a lot of open space for people to meet during this weird time. So good. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of these groups and out of the public input from it. Did you have other things to update?
Those are the main topics. So is there any questions for me?
Well, the idea of the focus group is no input from us at all, because that would taint the focus group thing. And I understand that going through a number of focus group sessions, and
That's what it is.
great idea. This is something we haven't done in the township to my knowledge, putting the residents first and then coming back with a whole plan to present them at the very end, make up the decision, coming back to us after all these groups. That sounds great. Thank you.
I've got a question about something we've got coming up before our next meeting, and that's the public hearing on the consent decree for the project alongside Kugler Mill Road there with what's going on. Do you have any update you can provide us to that? I've seen there's a second sign out there now promoting the public hearing. Thanks for getting that out, first of all. But what else are we doing to promote that?
Certainly. Just before I get into that, do we want to talk about this as part of the law director update, or Mr. Desai, do you just want to jump in with me on this? This is the public hearing for the consent decree.
Well, why don't you address whatever promotional aspects we're doing to let people know, and then Mr. Desai can discuss the meat of it.
Okay. All right. So at 6 p.m. February 2nd, we do have a public hearing for upcoming review of a consent decree. This has to do with a potential settlement that we have regarding a BZA conditional use application that was made to the township. There was a proposal for a church conditional use along Kugler Mill, and that has that's kind of evolved over time, but the settlement is available on the township website for review by the public. We have met the legal requirements for that by posting the legal ad in the Cincinnati Enquirer, but we've also posted notice on I believe the township website. I believe that was also put on Facebook. If it hasn't, it can be. And there was actually a resident that reached out to me who was confused about the different meetings. So we put up that second sign as a way to inform those in that area. We didn't take down the other sign because there's a second case that is potentially pending, depending on the outcome of the consent decree. So, does that answer the question, sir?
Yes, and I'm scrolling through our Facebook page now. I'm not sure there is a recent mention of it on there. So if you could promote it on there again too, that would be helpful, just so people get the word about it and aren't surprised.
Okay, yeah, we'll do it first thing in the morning.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Miller? All right. Thanks, Skylar. Let's move on to our law director report then. Mr. Deepak Desai. You're muted.
Thank you, Mr. James. Just a brief report tonight. Just want to let everyone know that the township did get us the signed tax exemption applications back. So thank you to Mr. Warwick and Mr. LaBarbera for getting those back to my office. Those have been submitted to the auditor's office. As everyone may know, they will work with the treasurer's office to get the requisite tax certificate, and then they will be filed with the Ohio Department of Taxation. But once that filing is done by the auditor, we should get confirmation, and I'll circle back with the board to let them know. But everything appears to be moving as we would expect. And that's all I had to report tonight, sir. Thank you.
Did you have anything to add as to that consent decree hearing?
No, that's actually, I believe, a case that came along before I was working with the township, and I think my firm is conflicted out with that, if I'm not mistaken.
You're correct. That's right. Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Desai about anything? All right. Thank you, Mr. Desai. Let's move on to the administrator report then, and any business that he has. Mr. Warwick?
Thanks. First thing I have is a resolution with some additional appropriations for the 2021 budget. I don't know, Mr. James, you want to put that up? We seem to be struggling from headquarters.
Yes, just a moment here.
This basically is picking up a couple of things. Number one, we did not have the COVID money that we had left over in the 2021 budget because at that time we didn't think we'd be able to use it. But since it's been, the date's been moved out to the end of next year, we've added that money. So that's about half of what we've added. The other thing that wasn't, a couple other lines weren't picked up out of the dump out of bucks into the budget thing. And a major part of it, I think about 265,000 is for the ESID, and that's just a pass through. So that's money in and money out. And then there's some money in there because some zoning lines were missed. So throughout the year, we want to stay on top of these appropriation additions and subtractions. So the board will probably see a few of these throughout the year as we try to keep everything up to date. So the resolution reads, a resolution amending 2021 appropriations, dispensing with a second reading and declaring an emergency.
Motion.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion as to this motion? Hearing none, let me ask Mr. Porter to call the roll for a vote, please.
Ms. LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Thanks. I have three quick blanket POs that follow along with these appropriations. Once again, what we have done is taken 1/3 of a year to ask for approval for that amount of spending to start the year. The first one is PO number 8782. It's for contract services for zoning, and it's in the amount of $6,667.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Porter, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Next is PO 8784. This is for zoning legal ads, and it does call out the Inquirer because that's where we place the ads. The amount is $2,500.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Porter?
LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
And the third one's PO 8785. This is for zoning property cleanup in the amount of $8,334.
Motion.
Okay, one of you has to second. I'll second it. Okay. Any discussion? Mr. Porter?
LaBarbera,
Mr. Barber, aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
Okay, I'd like to comment on a couple of things, questions that were brought up in public comments. On the topic of a lighting district, I don't recall off the top of my head what kind of consensus percentage you would have to have a lighting district, but I'm pretty sure one person can't request a lighting district, nor would they want to, because they would be fully assessed for the full amount. So I don't think it would work out for them. So I think there, like I say, I can't recall off the top of my head, but there would have to be a certain percentage consensus. As far as the 3 events, Easter, National Day of Prayer, and the Memorial Day Parade, we've had no discussion about what to do about those yet. I think we'd love to have all 3 of them. But really it depends on the situation with COVID. So we should be discussing those in the coming weeks. And that's all I have.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Warwick from anyone? All right. Let me just bring up one other thing. If we could do this going forward, Mr. Janis did have a good point. I noticed this earlier too, looking at our agenda. It didn't say our start time on it this time. Usually it does, but this one did not. So we should put that. And if we can put the day of the week on there too, fine, if it fits. But start time, I think, would be useful just for the historical record that these things also provide in our documents. So, all right, moving on then. Next we have trustee comments. Mr. Weedman, you're up first.
So as you know, I serve on the Hamilton County COVID defense team, and just want to give you a COVID update. There are currently for the vaccine, they're going to be vaccinating 80-year-old plus residents. There are about 400,000 80-year-old plus residents in the state of Ohio, and unfortunately, we only have about 100,000 doses currently for Ohio. So we're behind on getting the doses, the vaccine distributed. The other thing is that Johnson & Johnson is close to getting approval from the FDA for their single dose vaccination. And the more attractive thing potentially, I mean, there are a lot of people who feel that the first 2 vaccinations are using mRNA, which has been rejected by FDA on a number of different occasions for cancer treatments and some other things. And since COVID came out, it was fast-tracked for a COVID vaccination. But the Johnson & Johnson is a single dose, and that does not use mRNA. So that is hopefully going to be approved by the FDA by the end of the month. And Johnson & Johnson is already making, in the process of making 100 million doses under contract with the U.S. government. So hopefully vaccinations will continue to expand over the coming weeks. That's all I have.
You may have some information about this. I understand Jewish Hospital is providing vaccinations within the mall in their clinic space in there, and that they've been talking about the mall about other space. Do you have any information about that?
I'm not sure that they have enough to, I'm not positive about that, but I'm not sure they have enough doses to go around, quite frankly.
Yeah.
It's still very short. I know down at EMA Homeland Security, we have 3 freezers, and there's not a whole lot in any of those freezers.
Yeah.
So it's been, whatever we get in is being pushed through pretty quick. So I can't answer that about Jewish in their location in the mall, though, whether or not they're vaccinating people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. Mr. LaBarbera, comments?
Yeah, I was on the call today for the Hamilton County COVID update, and Commissioner said 12,000 active cases. We're still purple. Cases are dropping. It was interesting. Still have curfew, still home advisory, stay home. But the last few days, the numbers coming down. It's down 150 cases in the past. In that week from 350, it was down. It was down and below. That number was 400 just a couple of weeks ago. They've only had 5 cases in the last 7 days in the hospital. The Ohio alert, we're on purple right now. Thursday, when they make the announcement, we'll still be on purple. It takes 2 weeks, and then we would drop to red. And as Mr. Weedman mentioned, they're they do not have enough doses to cover the people. And the reason for the priority list that they have is that the number of COVIDs, the people who have died, 86% are over the age of 65, and that's why they are moving to the head of the line. And then I just have one more comment. We have the email blast that the township puts out. Of course, we have the quarterly newsletter that goes out to everybody, but the latest news is that email blast that goes out. We just had one go out on Friday, and all the residents, you folks listening, sign up to our Sycamore Township website and keep up to date.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thanks. Let me thank Beth Gunderson in particular for getting that email blast out regularly that Mr. LaBarbera just mentioned. She's been very good about making it look nice and be very informative. So she's a powerhouse there in our township office. So thank you for doing that, Beth. A few other things to mention. I wanted to recognize that yesterday was Martin Luther King Day. And that's a day dedicated to celebrating how very, very far we've come. It's a day for recognizing that we still have a ways to go for some too. And it's a day which reminds us to aspire to be a better country for all Americans. It's a good reminder that we should all strive to judge our fellow Americans, both nationally and locally here in our community, by the content of their character, and do so with open eyes and a merciful heart. Now, today's also the official start of our regular meeting year. This is an election year for my fellow trustees. I hope even with politicking that will certainly go on this year outside of our meeting room, we can have good, productive, civil meetings this year and keep political elements out of them. And I'll invite my fellow trustees to aspire to that as well, and I will aspire to that goal too. Tomorrow is also the inauguration of a new president. Some are happy, some aren't. Nonetheless, the peaceful transfer of power is at the core of our United States government. I may not agree with many of the policies of our new president, but I do wish him well. I hope there is a peaceful inauguration tomorrow, and that the country comes together a bit from some of the chaos we've seen recently, at least. So those are my comments here. Announcement changes. We have announcements on the second page of our agenda here. I don't think we have any changes noted. As I mentioned, we do have that public hearing coming up before our next meeting on that consent decree, but you can check our township calendar for other meetings which are scheduled too. We also have a Citizen Finance Committee meeting later this week. The Board of Zoning Appeals meeting actually has been canceled, it looks like, on the 20th. I think there's nothing on the agenda. So on our agenda now, we have two executive sessions. Let me ask, I'm sorry.
Well, you're going to close out this portion of it and then come back.
I guess we can do that. We'll still want to post a continuous video later of the active parts of the meeting when we come back. As long as you can keep the Vimeo stream going while we're away on our separate Zoom meeting, I think that'll work. Is that possible?
That breakout room, and we can't. It's
if we can all stand this. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, if I may, probably the first option is probably the quickest and safest. It's going to take everybody a while to log back in, and so if we can just kick everybody out of Zoom that's not in that's probably best. They'll still be able to see it from the live stream if they want.
Okay.
After the meeting.
Okay, then let's go that route. So first we need a motion to go to executive session.
Motion to go to executive session. You want to read what you're going to go to executive session for?
I can make the motion. Sure. I move that we adjourn into executive session with Law Director Deepak Desai as permitted by Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22 to discuss ongoing litigation, and that we adjourn into executive session with Law Director Deepak Desai as permitted by Ohio Revised Code 121.22 to discuss compensation of a public employee.
Second.
Any discussion?
Who are we inviting into the executive session?
We are inviting the trustees, the law director, the fiscal officer, Mr. Warwick, and Mr. Kellums, and Mr. Miller, I believe, for litigation as well.
That's correct.
Do we need anyone else?
No.
Okay, that would be who? All right. We need a roll call vote then. Mr. Porter, would you call the roll?
Mr. LaBarbera,
Aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourning into executive session through the method Mr. Ebel gave. Rob, if you'll let us know when we are clear to speak and when you dropped the others off.
We're back.
All right, we are back. Do we need Ms. Gunderson back online too for minute taking? She is not back in the Zoom call yet.
It doesn't, she'll catch this.
Okay, very good. All right, we are back. Mr. Porter, would you call the roll quickly?
Yes, Mr. LaBarbera,
Aye, here.
Mr. James,
Here.
Mr. Weedman.
You're muted, Tom.
You're muted, Tom.
Present.
All right. We have returned from executive session. Do we have any motions?
We have a
Yes.
resolution.
All right. Would you
Yes,
like me to
I-
share that? I think I can get it up on the screen here.
Hang on. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you see mine?
I didn't. I just put it up here.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, I have a resolution increasing the rate of pay for a township employee and dispensing with the second reading.
Motion.
Second,
All right. And for the record, this is the pay of John Estel, increasing from $20.55 an hour to $23.55 an hour. Mr. Kellums, could you state on the record just what it is Mr. Estel does for the township so the public has some idea of that?
Yes, Mr. Stell is a retired Cincinnati Bell employee who fell into our lap. He's been employed here for a couple of years. He does all of our fiber work, takes care of all of our phone systems, also is going to be the one running our cameras. He has also been working in the parks in the summertime, in the evenings and weekends for tournaments. And we are going to increase the amount of work that he's going to be doing for the fiber and cameras. That's going to be his main concern from here on out. Very valuable employee that it would cost us multiple times what we're paying John to have contractors come in and do the job that he does.
Very good.
Yeah, I'd like to add that John he's a great employee, and once again, as Tracy has suggested, he's a real bargain for us to have on staff. He does a great job, and he has a talent that we don't have on staff to match. So,
Agreed from here. Yes. And any other comments, or shall we call for a vote? Mr. Porter, would you call the vote, please?
Mr. LaBarbera,
aye.
Mr. James,
Aye.
Mr. Weedman.
aye. Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.